bad. I think people are just in a habit, right, of setting up here, and then we came in like, what? We're supposed to be over there,
And
so.
when we have lots of other people, then we do this.
Well, I think, the thing is, from a camera perspective and a streaming perspective, whatever, it's better to do it there, and it's better for the audience if they can, so. Yeah.
We are good to go?
All right, it is Tuesday, October 18th. I'm gonna begin the curriculum committee of the West Bend School District and School Board. We'll start with introductions. I'm Melanie Ergat, school board member.
Tani Schmidt, school board member.
Tim Harder, Director of Technology, Libraries, and Career Education.
Jill Reese, Director of Curriculum Instruction.
All right, looks like we're gonna start with the fall star data. And that's gonna be you, Rachel.
Yep, so I have a slide deck here, and I have to start by saying Tina Van Roo put these slides together, our district assessment coordinator, and she is at actually a Skyward conference this week, so I'm doing this in lieu of her. So we'll certainly take questions though, and I can either answer them or take them back to her if I can't answer them. Okay, so, the STAR Universal Screener is what we use to do 3 times a year. We screen students with STAR in literacy and in math. And really overall, there's a couple things we do with that data, and just to kind of give you a little bit of background on it. STAR is a nationally normed assessment that we use to kind of benchmark and get kind of just student results so we can help them with things like intervention, enrichment, all those things, and kind of see where they're at. We can also help them goal set with some of this because we do this 3 times a year. It's good to goal set with them at different points to see how they can make progress or meet goals. And so we do this early in September, we do it in December, and then we do it in April, May, kind of the end of the year to kind of see where students are at and to see where their growth is. We use these 3 assessments, and then we use some high school assessments also. So we use K1 STAR Early Literacy, we use grades 2 through 10 STAR Reading, and grades 1 through 8 STAR Math. And then at 9th and 10th grade, students can take specific math assessments for algebra and geometry and have results of that also. So that 9th and 10th grade we started a couple years ago, so we don't have, I shouldn't say that. Actually, this year we had really good participation. It's gone up the last couple years, but I think when we first started it, it was a little bit kind of getting kids to participate, getting teachers to kind of buy in and all that. We have a big number this year. We had, I think, like 300 and some kids in geometry and 300 and some kids in algebra, so we have a good number there.
Yeah, this is, in the last 5 years, this has become our only measuring tool.
At those grade levels, right?
Right, yeah, before we had something that was a little too invasive and kind of interfered with teaching because there was so much test taking.
Yeah. And then too, part of it, when I get into the high school stuff, I can explain because we have some things that we do with students with IEPs and things too. So this is our STAR Early Literacy Performance. And remember, this is the K1 reading part. Now, if you look at our fall data, so fall 21-22 was 40%, fall 22-23 was 38%. And you know, I don't share this lightly because obviously we have a concern when the number goes lower. But I want you to know that, you know, based on the work that we've done this year, all the schools have school improvement goals and plans, and they're working on that. We've reset kind of all the professional learning communities where teachers are kind of looking at the data and digging into what the students need and putting plans into place. So we expect that this will increase as we go through the year.
And this is, I just want to point out that this is K through 1, and some kids who will become very good readers are just not ready to read at that age.
Totally, and I'm going to go to the next slide because that kind of gets into your point too. So this is what the actual grade level data looks like. So the interesting thing to me is we're starting to have a conversation about that 4K, 5K transition. Because our 4K benchmarks are, they're different than our 5K benchmarks. Because our 4K program, as you know, is all about, it's nature-based and play-based, and it's about student experiences, right? So we don't have benchmarks in that program to say kids need to be at X reading level and do X and Y, right? And we believe that's developmentally appropriate. But then when we start testing them in kindergarten, we're like, well, they didn't meet these benchmarks, you know what I mean? So it's kind of a catch-22, but we're definitely talking about it. I'm bringing together the early learning leadership and the 4K principals to have a conversation about it. Yeah.
I just know it can damage kids to.
Oh, for sure.
To, you know, for them to think that I'm not smart when they're just not ready.
Totally.
And that's fine.
And so I was telling the 4K people, so I worked in a district a number of years ago where we took out all the kitchens in kindergarten. Okay, hold on, I know. Right, so there was a big push that kindergarten was academic, right? So we took out all the kitchens in kindergarten and kind of, every kid needed to be at this level and do this thing. Well, within 6 years, we put them all back in. You know what I
And it's
mean?
done with good
Because-
intentions, I understand
Totally.
that, but, you know,
Yeah.
we've learned a few things since then, and want to make sure that we acknowledge the lesson.
Totally, and that's the thing. I mean, I think we can look at what the things are the kids really need and set up some of those kind of goals for the kids, but it also needs to be, in my mind, developmentally appropriate for those kids. Yeah. So this then gets into our reading proficiency for grades 2 through 10. And again, and if you look at test participation can affect this, but I don't believe being a 1% difference in test participation, it has that much of an effect on the results. So of course it's a concern when the data looks like that, but again, you know, we're working through the school improvement plans, the goal setting, and then those teachers really digging into the data and their grade level teams and dissecting what the students need. So we hopefully then throughout the year we'll see a shift in scores.
Now, I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm just reading this, so, because the, each column is for grade 2, that means that's not the same set of children.
You can go diagonal on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
just want to clarify that.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
go diagonal on it, and if you go to diagonal on it, then it's a pretty
Right,
similar cohort without
Sure.
students that entered and exited, that kind of thing, but
Right.
yes. Yeah, so I will go to that next.
Does STAR ever change their benchmarks?
So that's a good question. They re-norm every couple years. So they don't change their benchmark, so to speak, but they re-norm kind of their SGP and their qualifiers. So we're working off of the most current norm.
Sure. Well, I just was wondering, you know,
Yeah.
if they change, you know, what their benchmarks are basically from this year to this year, like, then the data's gonna look different, you know what I'm saying? Like-
Yeah, so this data, they haven't changed it. They do it about every 2 to 3 years. So we're right in the zone right now where they haven't shifted.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing just to note is we've been having conversations about second grade, because if we look at second grade scores in the different areas, and not only in this assessment, in local assessments too, we are seeing some concerns. And so, from experience in another district, too, we saw like a plateau at second grade, so it seems to be kind of a thing that's repetitive in other districts too. But we're definitely having a conversation about what we need to do about that too, because second grade is, if you look at K and 1, those are huge learning years, right? Developmentally, student readiness, and then second grade, you're kind of settling in. And so then, what do we need to do at second grade to help those kids? Yeah. Do you have questions on any of the other grade levels? So this is our math proficiency 1-8. So, and we were at the same amount of participation, so, you know, there's a small shift, but again, as we work through the school professional learning communities and those teacher collaboration, we hope that we'll see, and we trust that we'll see some pretty big shifts. The grade level data then, as you can see in the math data too, second grade continues to kind of pop forward as a grade level that we really need to look in and do some work around, so.
What are the kids told when the test is being handed out? You know, I have really vague memories from when I was a kid. Oh, this test doesn't count for your grade, and while that's true,
Yeah,
you know, some kids that just means they really don't try at all.
for sure. So I happened to be at Silverbrook when they were doing the test. And I walked into all the classrooms I was with, both Lance and Heather, and, I think test environment is a really important thing. What happens when we do these repetitively over, it becomes part of natural practice, so people don't make it a really important thing, do you know what I mean?
Sure.
And so the environments were great, and people were on it, but when I talked with Lance, he's like, yeah, I think we need to beef up kind of like explaining what the test is about and the importance of it and that. So it's something I know that people are gonna work on for the winter administration.
Sure.
Just because it becomes kind of seamless at some point,
Right.
and sometimes, that's good and bad, right?
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to that.
Yeah.
So your point about what happens is well taken, because I think we do need to just, and especially at the Silverbrook level, explain to kids what the test is for and
Yeah.
how it can be useful.
Well, and you know, I understand the importance of taking the pressure off, but at the same time adding that, like, but this is still gonna be used to help, you know, determine, it's still valuable to them in some way. You know, if they don't have any reason to care, then some just won't.
And two, that's where I believe, like, when we can do goal setting around this, that helps the student invest in kind of their own personal progress in that.
And if as administrators, you can come up with some sort of script or, you know, talking
Mhm.
points that whoever the
Yeah.
proctor can repeat, you know.
Yeah, that's a great
you know,
idea.
so then there's some consistency across the district.
Yeah, no, that's a really good idea. So then, if we go into, this is the high school math I was talking about, so 9th and 10th grade. So if you look at STAR Math, that's the assessment that students with IEPs take. And so it's a much smaller percentage of students that take that. And those are generally the kids that take like the DLM from the state, the dynamic learning maths assessment for the state and all that. If you get into algebra and geometry, those are where the big numbers are. So like, I think one of them was 370. One of them was a little bit lower for some reason, I'm not sure why, but you know, there are close to 400 kids that take that algebra and geometry. And so as we look at that, geometry really did kids went up. And so it's just interesting to see, because there's something happening in geometry that we can maybe replicate then through algebra and some of those other areas. So it's having those conversations with the high school teachers about that. So then the next slide kind of breaks down the student results. Any questions about that?
I know, you know, this is like our dress rehearsal for the full board presentation. Maybe something you might ask about, I mean, I know that you generally know how many students are in each of these grades, but if it's not too difficult to.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah, in fact, I can probably pull up, I can tell you the numbers, but yes, so you think for the board, it's already exact one?
Especially just for context,
Yeah.
especially when you see large swings, like for the IEP, you know, when you see a larger swing, I'm looking at, yeah, when you see a larger swing, sometimes it can be explained by a smaller sample. And
Yeah,
sometimes
so
not.
in can give you some numbers right now if you'd like, and then we can put them into the presentation.
I don't need to know right now, I just
Okay.
know that tends to
People ask.
give some context and nuance,
Yeah, for sure, happy to do that.
and it's something that might hear get asked. So just give me a heads up.
Yeah, no, for sure. For math in particular, are you thinking other areas, or was it really the high school math that area?
Well, when you present the IEP, you know, pull out the
For
IEP
sure.
numbers in particular, we know that's a subset, because all the board members know generally how many, you know, the class size at each of the grade levels, but when you're pulling out a subsection, then knowing what that is might be helpful.
Got it. And again, I just, so like if you break this down and you look at the geometry scores, they far exceed everything else. So then it makes me curious in having those conversations with the geometry teachers kind of on what's going on, because there's a significant shift. So then just to close out, and I talked a little bit about this, our district improvement plan, our site improvement plans, you know, we use this to help set those academic goals. We also have a teaching and learning goal plan that I shared with you guys, the goals last time we met, and we build these things in to help schools and look at what the department needs to do and things like that. And then again, those professional learning communities that the teachers meet and like dig through data and see what kids need and deliver those things in their classrooms. The multi-tiered systems of support is really getting into the intervention area and helping students with that. And then the student growth percentage, we'll see it in the winter data set. You need enough data through the year to get a growth, and so we'll be able to see that in winter.
And if I'm recalling correctly, the STAR program has a report for each student that the parents or whoever is in charge of those kids can read, and it's easy to read and get feedback and stuff, correct? So I guess maybe a little reminder in your beginning of your presentation that it's not just for us, but it's for the families as well.
Yeah.
Informative.
Perfect.
And we have gotten a lot of good feedback from parents that they like the STAR assessment because of that reason. Yeah, they don't feel like it's a waste of time because they're getting some information also.
Right. Okay. Good. Thank you. Great, so we're set with that.
Yep, all right, so we'll move on to the next piece here, curriculum cycles. It's also going to be Dory's here.
Me, and then we got Tim on the back at the end, so we have a draft that we're gonna share with you, kind of what we're doing with curriculum analysis and program review and all those pieces. And so, we're just really sharing this with you as information because this is the committee that works on the curriculum pieces, right? So overall, we looked at what are all the big things that need to happen to get through a curriculum review. And I look at a couple of things that like happened last year, like we did the big thing for social studies. We did some things for social emotional learning, human growth and development. There were a lot of big things that came through this committee and then went to the full board. So we just try to organize and kind of put together what that planning looks like so you guys have an understanding of it. So really, if you look at this, this is really kind of the overall model. I'm gonna make this just a little bit smaller, a couple things on the page. And so it's really about these four things, but the important thing to note is with the circle, they don't always necessarily happen in the same order. And we've had tons of conversations about this because you can go through a program analysis and realize you maybe need to change a course name. You maybe need to bring in new resources in one grade level. You maybe need to do the whole thing and bring in new resources and tools for the whole thing. But each one looks a little bit different. And so we tried to set this up where curriculum areas can kind of come in and out based on what the needs are. So really, it's starting with a program analyze or analysis and starting there. So in this part, it just describes what those 4 areas are. So the analysis, the design, the development, and the implementation. And if you look at the design part, that's kind of really the big bucket that happens after you do this program analysis, where you determine, ooh, we need to rename a course, we need to sunset a course, we need to bring in vendors and go through a request for proposal, like all those things. So that's kind of the biggest area that happens, but that's really after you do this program analysis. And so until you do that analyze section, you can't really get to the design phase, if that makes sense. The next part of it then just gets into talking about what those other phases are. So if you're in the development, you're really developing from what happened in the design phase, any tools for the resources, any like units of study, any standards alignment, those kinds of things. And then the other one is implementation. Then you implement those things. You implement the curriculum plans, you implement new resources if you have them, you implement like a course layout guide or a syllabi or whatever that thing is that you have. So it's really kind of looking through it through that lens. There's a specific then really deeper explanation of this program analyze, because really this is what gets at getting to all those other steps. And so if we do this program analyze and we get to the point where we've gone through, we've collected data, we've looked at our goals and our outcomes, we've looked at student like enrollments, I mean, you look at all those different pieces over the course of time and see where do we really need to either adopt new resources, stay status quo, or build new programs or courses and things like that. So this is the piece that kind of kicks all that off and gets us into those other areas. So I went through and I looked at where we were kind of with different subject areas, and we have kind of these tiles to show you kind of the work we've done. And then I have a draft paper document that I gave you guys. This is not in the slides because this is hot off the press and it's subject to change. So this is the work that we really did last year, and so this year, and we really did program analysis for these areas, so it's in the design phase this year. And so it was human growth and development, literacy K-8, health, writing, social studies, and these digital tools. So you guys had a heavy lift last year also, because we really hit the ground running. So that was last year, and that brings us then to kind of where things are in the process for this year. So for this year, we're really looking at doing a program analysis for these areas. Math K-12, and I fully believe that we're going to do the analysis for Math K-12 and then see, we might not need new resources, but we might need to beef up something we have, or we might need to do something with some online things or things like that, but we need to do that analysis. Assessment system-wide, so we've had STAR for a number of years and it gives us good longitudinal data, but we just need to look at it and see, is that the best thing and how does it coordinate with our other assessments and our digital tools too. ELA 9-12, we did that big K-8 piece last year, but we need to really look at the 9-12 piece. And then K-12 PE with a specific focus on K-2 fitness. We have some work to do in our elementary via minutes, so that's where that K-2 fitness piece comes in. So that's kind of on our plate for this year. And looking ahead, just to kind of share share with you where other things are in the process. So these things now are really sort of in the development phase because these are things that were on the docket last year. So human growth and development, health, brain in the social studies 5-8. They've been developing like units of study, developing course materials, things like that. And then implementation is really, and the hard thing about kind of the heavy lift we had last year is that some of these groups are doing like development and implementation at the same time because we had such a heavy lift, right? But these are really the things that are kind of going fully to implementation is reading, the social studies, the SEL. We had some work with French and then with digital tools. And so they're kind of building the plane and flying it at the same time, some of these groups, because we had a big lift last year. So then our last slide is looking at potentially what's to come for program analysis. And so potentially it's K-4 social studies, K-12 art, K-12 music, and K-12 science. Now, part of this chart that we just worked on this week, I had a little bit of a shift in my thinking on social studies and science. And one of my things is, I try to be really conscious of the elementary teacher because they teach all the subjects. And when we bring in too much too fast, it's a really heavy lift for them, a really taxing process. So if I look at this and I say we're going to work next year on K-4 social studies and then K-12 science, that's two things for elementary teachers. So when we put this together, I already started making some shifts on it because I have to be conscious of that work for them and what they can really implement at a high level and really take on. So this has already made some shifts since we put it in Board Docs. So if you look at this chart is just kind of another draft of what we're thinking for like a 6-year plan. So, oops. So really the idea is that over the course of 6 years, everything kind of gets a program analysis, right? And that we come back to it and we say either, yeah, we need to do a whole scale shift, or no, we're kind of good where we are. But I made some shifts in terms of some conversation we had this morning and yesterday about kind of this K-4 piece. And so I continue to look at that and think about that, to talk with the elementary principals about that, because even this year with, kind of that mid-year shift we had with the literacy resources and then bringing in digital tools this year, that's a lot, yeah. And so then I think, we're going to go through a couple more years of that. I don't know that that's always the best thing. And so we just need to be conscious of that. Yeah. So anyway, this is really for your information, really just so you guys know where we're at with curriculum analysis and program analysis. And
I love this roadmap and also including your process because it helps, depending on where people enter into the awareness of how we function, it's important to be able to point to, well, this is part of a normal part of a process. This isn't a surprise evaluation or, reactionary investigation of
Right.
everything, so.
Yeah, and even like we have these caveats at the bottom of the stack too, like Tim and I talked, and it's really like digital tools now are almost not a separate thing, but part of every curriculum piece we look at, because they impact the tier 1 regular instruction too. So looking at that a little bit different. I initially had put digital tools kind of on the docket in different places on here, and after Tim and I talked, it really can't be separate. It has to be part of.
It's just another resource
what
that
we're
has to go
doing.
hand
Yeah.
in hand, as we see more and more of that as we go forward, so.
Unless you think that could be like for hardware, but you do that, you're.
Yeah, we'll do that through our
Yeah.
tech plan that way, and so I think it's just one of those things, if we're gonna do, I think, a program evaluation or analyzation, if we're having all this work around analyzing our tier 1 curriculum, doesn't matter what content area, and if there's a match to some sort of online component, let it be the actual, textbook or curricular recess or another tool that we wanna use, it should all come to the board at one point in time. One implementation plan, not, oh, we started this and 2 years later, we're gonna add this on, this on, this on. That gets very confusing for our teaching staff, and I can only imagine as a board member or a community member understanding what is the actual tier 1 approved curricular resource at that point. So it'll show up as a package deal at that point.
The other thing is then, there's things like, industry standards that Tim's department worked with, the AP College Board that we've got for higher education connections we have. And sometimes those dictate what we do also. We don't necessarily get to make a choice on some of those sometimes. And so we just have to be conscious of that, because like, we don't have AP on here anywhere, but it does impact, because the College Board will say, okay, it's been X years, you need to pick from these 3 textbooks and use one of these to be compliant with the College Board. So there's things like that that impact us too.
And we'll continue to say, a great example of that is we have our graphic design textbooks that came through. It's just Rain Park requires us to have that for our technical college pieces. You'll see our programs of study in all of our career education areas outlined in here. It's pretty hard to predict that we're gonna wait 5 years for manufacturing. Some of it's a capacity issue, as Jill talked about for the elementary teachers. Sometimes we have some teachers who teach in multiple areas, so we don't wanna, analyze each of those areas at one point in time. So that may cycle a little bit, but we might bring some programs back every 2 years for analysis. Some programs may wait 4 years, depending upon the topic, depending upon what's changed in industry, what's changed at higher ed, similar to AP College Board. Some of those things are just a larger piece than just the Wisconsin School District at that point. So there'll be some fluidity in those programs of study where they will fall on this as we go over the next couple of years.
So we actually have the document. I'm just gonna go back over the slide. We didn't print it, but it is, let me just see if we can click on it here. So this document is one that we're going to use for our program of study. So I just want to quick show it to you. It's nothing fancy, but it really just gets everything on paper. So it's really just looking at doing a full program analysis using a document like this before you even get into the other areas. So I'm just going to scroll down and go to the table of contents here. So really in the table of contents, these are the things that it goes through. It goes through like a statement of purpose and goals, a program description, alignment, stakeholder involvement, where you get teachers involved in kind of that in the process, learning outcomes, implementation plan, assessment plan recommendations, and then acknowledgements for the people that participated. But really a full review kind of goes through these areas because it gets into all the different things that have to be investigated and looked at really closely to know what our next steps are.
And the nice part is this, Jill and I have spent some time mirroring, there's some requirements that we have federally for our career education areas. In some of our process, we've actually kind of mirrored some pieces from Jill's processes and the processes that I lead up to get to this final piece of what it would look like. So it's not different for career education versus a K-4 math. The process is similar. There may be a couple extra steps for each one of those areas, depending upon what we're looking at. But for overall, the process is consistent K-12 at that point.
That's kind of where we're at with that. Like I said, this is really just drafts of what we're working on, so you guys know. It's not something we're bringing forward to the board, and maybe it's just information for the board, but just wanted you guys to have a transparent look at it.
All right, so we'll move on to early college credit and Start College Now courses.
Good morning. So this is something that comes in front of the curriculum committee every fall and every spring, and then it will go to the board for full approval in the consent agenda. So the early college credit program and the Start College Now program are statewide programs in state law that allow a high school student who meets certain criteria and courses not offered in the school district to take advantage of either college classes at a four-year institution or a two-year technical college at the state. So in front of you, you see a list of Start College Now programs. Our students this year are requesting courses at both Rain Park Technical College and Waukesha County Technical College. And then you have a list of requests for the four-year universities. In reviewing our course requests this year, all of our requests are either here in West Bend at UWWC, or as UW, they can use the new term, UW Milwaukee, Washington County, and UWM down in Milwaukee at that point in time. So there is board policy also around this, so a student has to, they cannot be credit deficient to take part in this program. They have to be 11th and 12th grader. They must have a 2.0 cumulative GPA, and they can't have any failures the previous semester for this before they go in there. Often our students will request more classes than what you can actually fit into a caseload. So students can take up to 18 credits per semester on this program. When you look at some of these lists, you'll see some, we take the student's name off, but you can, it'll say class of 2023 and then West or East. Each one of those is a separate student making a request. They may request 20 classes, 30 classes. They often will not take that many courses, and they will hit either the 18 credit limit, or as the process of scheduling happens, what colleges offer at that point in time, they're asking for this big umbrella so that when they go in to make their course selections for spring, they have themselves covered. They have to apply by October 1st. Not all of those colleges even have all their course schedules and course lists and what's actually being offered in the spring semester. So you'll see some of the students on here who have asked for numerous courses that, you'd be like, how could they do all that? They will not end up with that many courses at that point in time. On the list for early college credit, you'll also know that a few of the courses are shaded. Those were actually not approved by the school district. So part of the process of reviewing this is that in the state law and in our policy is that if we offer a course here that is 80% equivalent, we do not allow you for us to pay for you to go to the college level and take that course. So you'll see some of those in there. We have astronomy here, we have a mythology course, we have sociology, we have principles of finance here. So those are things that we've already reviewed by the school counseling team and myself that says we have a high school equivalency at that point in time. If a student does go and take these courses and they fail, the cost for the courses actually falls on the student and the family at that point in time. So they are notified of that up front.
Do they pay first and then get reimbursed upon?
So we
passing,
typically will
or
get the
vice versa?
bill, and then where the reimbursement comes into play is often around textbooks and other materials that are needed for the course. So if they go out and they purchase all those things, they have to bring that back for reimbursement.
Got it.
We would not reimburse it if Tommy failed XYZ
Okay.
course at that point.
I just want to make sure you're
Yeah,
not chasing a payment.
Very rarely, my understanding is, going back, and very rarely do we have to chase families for that.
Sure.
I think we have large conversations with these students up front about what this means. You're starting your college transcript, just like when you take a technical college credit class here. You're starting your college existence at that point in time. That plays into your FAFSA, your financial aid, all those different types of pieces with that. So the program covers not just only the cost of the course, but it covers the textbooks or materials that may go with it as part of that. And then we go through that process. That's budgeted for yearly in the C&I budget at that point in time. But the process that's required through the law and through our policy is that it would come here and then it would actually go to the board for approval. So you can see on Monday night's approval, then we can notify the students of the approval or non-approval, and then they can actually start their process of actually enrolling in the college and then picking their classes and building a schedule at that point in time. Some of these students will actually be balancing their class schedule at the high school along with some college courses, so that even makes it more difficult for them. Any questions you may have?
So are these classes offered like after school or more in the evening hours or
It
just
all
whenever?
depends. Some are in the middle of the day. So we have, I actually had one of my youth apprenticeship students 2 years ago who had one course at the high school, came and worked YA for us for an hour, went up to UW Washington County here, UWM, took a class there, then came back for 2 classes and then came back to work. Some of them are taking them virtually, so they're asynchronous. So it's just like they're fitting into the college schedule at that point in time. So it could be all over from morning to an evening class at that point in time. And so they have to balance that in their schedule with their high school classes and other commitments that they have.
used to seeing this.
Yeah, this is a normal one that comes every, you'll see this every October and then every March, because March 1 is the deadline for the fall rate at that point in time, so.
I think it's great that we offer this to the students, you know.
There are some school districts who will shy away from promoting this because there's a money cost, just like if we offer additional coursework here or whatever else at that point in time. This is just a way for our students who have run out of opportunities here to continue their education going forward. So I think back to a young man that I spoke to last year, he had exhausted all of his welding and manufacturing courses here, all of his technical college courses here. He was enrolled in Stark College now at Ring Park, taking night classes in that case for welding, and he graduated with his welding certificate, and he was halfway done with his associate's degree at that point. Not every kid has their life that well planned out. I surely did not when I went and chose my college career, but for those students who are ready for this, it is a great opportunity at that point in time. And if we don't offer something in their career interest, it also helps them prepare for their future. So, yeah, it is a really nice program to have for us.
When does a student need this? I imagine that you'd have to start anticipating this like in Silverbrook or Badger so that you can get certain requirements out of the way or be ready to be
Yeah, you
able
have to balance, so these do come back as high school credits for us also. So we have, for every college credit, you get a quarter credit at the high school level. So these students who take these courses are earning credit for their electives for their graduation and their diploma at that point in time. But often the students who are doing this have figured out this is what I want to do. So we have some students, we were talking before the meeting, Jill and I and Ms. Boyer were talking about, we have some students who are going into cosmetology. Well, we don't offer that here, right? We would never be able to recreate that here. So there's an interest piece there. It's really for those students who have a good idea of what they want to do with their life after high school, have exhausted what opportunities we have here, and are willing to start that initial freshman trial at that point in time. So yeah.
Any other questions?
Other than that, it will come to the board then on Monday night as part of the consent agenda, as it has in the past, for approval, and then we notify the students at that point in time.
So I did want to tell you that we do have another trip coming forward for the board meeting on Monday night. We didn't specifically bring it to here, I have a couple other people reaching out. It's a trip with German to Chicago, so it's going to be at the board for discussion.
Are they going to Christmas market?
Yes. Yeah.
Then if there's something else, we will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right.